僕はスズメを作りながら、こんな風にスズメたちのように自由に日本を旅することって果たして可能になるんだろうか。早くそういう世界が戻ってきてほしい、そんなことを思いながらスズメの旅を描いていました。
The year was 2020. The world was in disarray, and life was unpredictable. And it was around the same time when Makoto Shinkai had started working on his latest film. Making a film during a global pandemic was hard. Production delays, lack of staff, and well, too many uncertainties.
もっと言えば映画館で映画がかけられるのかどうかもわからなかった、あるいは
But unlike the reality that was awfully unreliable, when the world discovered of Shinkai's new project, it was anything but unpredictable. Now some people might call it boring or repetition, but I call it a vision. Makoto Shinkai's movies are kind of like pages from the same book. They do look kind of different at times in terms of content, but it's quite easy to tell they are from the same book. And that is a good thing. Protagonist's character designs, backgrounds, cinematography, well, you can tell it's a Shinkai movie without even looking at the title. And maybe there was a section of the audience who expected Suzume to be different. After all, Shinkai did suggest that it was going to be so. But in reality, it was an archetype that was never gonna change. And well, after watching the film, I'm kinda glad that it didn't.
And so every shot, as much as possible, was designed to be slightly disconcerting, but ultimately satisfying. That was the philosophy of the shooting.
The greatest filmmakers have always defined themselves with a signature, be it with exuberant visual mediums.
I knew there was something fishy.
I don't like the way that guy looked at us.
Okay.
The alien.
Or while they're in search of ingenious technical motifs. And this is another way of saying, well, you gotta stick to what you're good at. And animation is no different. Just like all these recognizable movie experiences, Suzume represents the consolidation of a filmmaker's ideas, a vision that had been years in the making.
僕にもガールフレンドができた。子猫のミミだ。ミミは小さくて可愛くて。
This was Shinkai, before all the fame and the glory, when he rarely had a budget to work with. Youthful romance and artful environments, even when it was devoid of colors. And the concept was broiling. But it would take a few more years for him to earn the budget to match the expansion of his vision. Voices of a Distant Star was truly the birth of Shinkai. Young protagonists dreaming of distant futures, extensive skies, intense lens flares, combined with the metaphysical. The romance expands into newer horizons. It becomes a longing. Distance now sits between the love. And it's almost like you can trace a line straight from this, all the way through his filmography to intersect at Suzume. It wouldn't be surprising to anyone because this is evolution. No matter the predictable linearity, it is still progression. Yes, Suzume does sit on the other side of this line. However, if you could travel back in time to the early 2000s to watch Voices of a Distant Star, you could have easily predicted a movie called Suzume about 20 years later. It's not exactly magic, but simply conceptualizing the director's foresight. The place promised in our early days.
Sayuri, are you there?
5 centimeters per second.
でも、遠野くんはいつも私のずっと向こう、もっとずっと遠くの何かを見ている。
And children who chase lost voices.
そうか。体が勝手に動くんだ。考えるより先に。
They all meet in the middle between fantasy and distant love, something that was now predictably the Shinkai style. But this diagram of Shinkai's subject matter would find itself at the dawn of a transformation, something that including Shinkai probably didn't expect.
Now it is Saturday morning in Japan, and the extent of the devastation is clear to see.
An earthquake so strong it literally shifted the Earth's axis by about 25 centimeters.
Japan was struck by the biggest earthquake ever recorded in its history. And in the wake of this devastation, 18,000 people had lost their lives. Shinkai was in his studio when disaster struck, something that he recalls vividly.
2011年に東日本大震災が起きた時に僕もそうなんですが、日本全体が本当に心まで含めて大きく揺さぶられるような巨大な災害だったと思うんですね。
And effectively, life would change for the people who lived through it. And as for Shinkai, it would change the scope of his career.
アニメーションでしか表現できないような、エンターテインメントでしか表現できないような、災害との向き合い方のようなものがないかなと考え始めて。
Youthful exuberance and distant love, but now at the end of the world. Apart from the Garden of Words, which was still built upon his original themes, his stories would become more contemporary, with confused teenagers living at the edge of the impossible, trying to find love while saving the world. The structure of his concepts became quite clear. Your Name, although fictionally apocalyptic, was an indirect depiction of the events of 2011. And Weathering with You, while superficially fantastical, was rooted in reality of the ever-changing climate. And this is what led to Suzume. Not only was it just predictable, but in fact, it was inevitable. It starts off with something fantastical, then it introduces the young protagonist who is distracted by a mystery. They find love or connection with an unlikely individual, their world faces an impending catastrophe, and through all of this, they try their best to save the world. And, well, structurally, the motif doesn't get any more conspicuous than this. In Shinkai's vision, these worlds are extensions of the real world, and in a way connected to each other. And this means that even some of the more abstract elements are rather recurring. Overlapping scenes, visually comparable character designs, and even the incorporation of Japanese folklore and tradition into their respective storylines. Suzume did exactly what was expected of it. No smoke and mirrors, but simply expanding upon what you're truly good at. Speaking of which, I think it would be criminal to talk about the predictable brilliance of Suzume and not delve into the aesthetics of its visuals. Shinkai constructed the world of Suzume with a level of craftsmanship that is hard to replicate, but something that we have come to expect from his earlier films. It's not just that overarching theme of the story, but in a Shinkai film, the artistic payoff is as satisfactory as its plot. The lighting, the colors and the hues, the clouds, the food and the magic. Visual cues to remind you that you're in a Shinkai film. And just like how the lighting and colors define the aesthetic of his recent accomplishments like Your Name, Suzume stuck to the same blueprint. From the sparkling of water to the dappling of sunlight, it looks like a Shinkai film and it even feels like one. And maybe Shinkai is probably not the only one who does it, as people like Hayao Miyazaki are known for their exemplary observation of the real world. But Shinkai does create art in a way that almost emulates reality, not just with a creative license, but almost like a one-on-one. These shots are not just inspired, but these are real places in a real world. Traces of reality captured on the screen, stylized to fit into a beautiful visual narrative. Shinkai did this in almost all of his movies. He obviously did this in Suzume, and probably he'll keep on doing it. And more power to him. These movies tend to exist in a universe where art is a trope. It is not only ever present and beautiful, but it is in fact what makes a Shinkai film a Shinkai film. There is a beautiful structure to everything that Shinkai does that can only be appreciated when you look at the bigger picture. And maybe there will come a day when Shinkai moves on from the usual to make things that are less obvious. But until that day arrives, if at all, let's not bother him by calling him the next Miyazaki and just enjoy the simplicity of his imagination.